Yes.
Your Honour, the next witness is BAA, who is giving evidence remotely, and I understand that Your Honours and Commissioner can see Mr BAA, as can I, but
Mr
no one else.
BAA, can you see and hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Would you take an oath from the Bible or an affirmation?
Affirmation.
Right. Would you repeat after me, please? I do solemnly, sincerely and truly
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly
declare and affirm
that
the evidence I shall give in this Royal Commission
the evidence that I shall give in this Royal Commission
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth. Thank you. Take a seat.
You've been given the pseudonym BAA by the Royal Commission?
Correct.
You've made a statement, sir, dated the 13th of May 2015?
Yes.
Are the contents of that statement true and correct?
Yes.
I tender the statement.
Exhibit 28.8.
Mr BAA, would you like to read your statement?
I'll give it a try.
If you want me to take over, just say so.
Thank you. This statement made by me accurately sets out the evidence that I am prepared to give to the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse. The statement is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. Where direct speech is referred to in this statement, it is provided in words or words to the effect of those which were used, to the best of my recollection. My name is BAA. I was born in 1962. I am currently 53 years old. I grew up in Ballarat with my mother, stepfather and siblings. My mother was Catholic and so was my grandmother, great auntie and my cousins from that side of the family. My grandmother, great auntie and their families were very committed to the Catholic Church. In 1967 I began prep at St. Alepius Girls' School in Victoria Street, Ballarat, which was run by the Sisters of Mercy. I was around 4 years old at the time. I was at St. Alepius Girls' School from prep to the end of grade 2. Although St. Alepius was a girls' school, boys could be enrolled in the school from the start of prep until the end of grade 2. From grade 3, the boys were transferred to St. Alepius Primary School, which was run by the Christian Brothers. The school was located next to St. Alepius Church in Victoria Street, Ballarat. I remember two teachers at St. Alepius Girls' School. One was a Sister Paula and the other was a Sister David. Sister Paula was nice, but Sister David was very violent. In 1968, when I was in grade 1, I was abused by a nun at St. Alepius Girls' School. I do not remember the name of the nun who abused me. She was not one of my teachers at the school. She was neither Sister Paula, Sister David, nor my prep teacher. The only time I remember seeing this nun was when she abused me. I can recall she was wearing a black coloured habit. During winter, nuns wore black coloured habits, whereas white coloured habits were worn in summer. Because of this, I believe I was abused in the winter after my 6th birthday. I don't remember how long the incident of abuse lasted, but when she was done, the nun took me off her lap and warned me that what had just happened was God's secret. She told me if I told anyone what had happened, I would go to hell. I recall running back to my classroom. I don't recall seeing the nun ever again. There was one incident. I did not tell anyone I was abused at the time. It was also not something I could have brought up with me mum. If I had told anyone in the school, it would shame my mother and reflect badly on it. After my abuse, I think my behaviour changed straight away. The sisters were obviously not happy with the way I was behaving, and I started getting more beatings, especially from Sister David. I don't remember any talk amongst other students about the nun who abused me, or to avoid any particular nun at the time. In 1970, I was transferred to the Christian Brothers Primary School for the start of grade 3. I was around 7 or 8 years old. My grade 3 teacher was Brother Gerald Leo Fitzgerald. Everyone called him Fitzy in school. On at least a dozen occasions over the year, Fitzgerald chose me to sit on his knee whilst he taught the rest of the class. I was sitting on Fitzgerald's knee in front of the classroom. He would kiss me on the cheek and mouth, and would also rub and stroke his hands on my legs, groin and backside. The rubbing and stroking were always over my clothes. I saw this happen to a lot of other students in the classroom, and not just me. I noticed that it happened to some of the boys more than the others. Around late November or early December 1970, Fitzgerald organised bicycle rides for the class to go to various sites around town. I think it was around November and December because the weather had warmed up. On one occasion, the class rode out through the bush towards White Swan Reservoir area. We ended up stopping at a dam in the bush south of White Swan Road and west of Glen Park Road. Gerald told all the boys to strip off and go for a swim. We all undressed and made our way towards the water. As I headed towards the water, Fitzgerald pulled me aside and told me to follow him. We walked to the other side of the dam wall, where we were completely out of view of the other boys. I remember Fitzgerald was dressed in a white shirt and black pants. I, on the other hand, was completely naked. Fitzgerald knelt down on the ground in front of me and started to kiss me on the cheek and mouth. I just stood there frozen, with my arms down by my side. Fitzgerald held on to my arms while they were by my side. A short time later, bent down and tried to start kissing my face. I pulled backwards, breaking free of Fitzgerald's hold and falling on the ground. I scurried backwards over the embankment and ran towards where the other boys were. I went into the water with the other boys where I felt safe and stayed there for the rest of the time. This was the last time I can recall being abused by Fitzgerald. After grade 3, I had constant fear of violence and sexual. After grade 3, I had a constant fear of violence and sexual abuse in the school. You never knew what was going to happen next every day. Because if it wasn't you, it was someone else. I don't know whether Fitzgerald was set up to groom everyone for what was coming later, but for me it was the start of fear of violence and of sexual abuse. This fear continued for me all the way up to Form 1. In grade 4, Mrs. Wilcox was my class teacher. She was a lay teacher in her late 40s or early 50s. I believe she must have known what was happening, as it was a very small school of only 4 classrooms. I can't really remember grade 5. I'm not sure what teacher I had. I'm not Yeah, I'm not sure what teacher I had for grade 5. I was first abused by Brother Robert Best sometime before I started in grade 6 in 1973. I don't remember the exact date. Brother Best was the principal of the school at the time. Early one frosty morning at the start of school day, I think it might have been when I was in grade 3, another boy whose name I can't recall, and I were tasked to collect the crates of milk from the rear of the school and take them into the school staff room. After we had finished putting away the milk away in the staff room, it was customary to warm your hands up in the sink of warm water. We filled the sink up and waited for the other boy to warm his hands up. Once he had finished, he made his way out of the staff room at the same time Bess entered the room. Came into the staff room and closed the door behind him. Bess was not my teacher at the time. Bess made his way over to where I stood. He stood to my right-hand side. I continued to warm up.
Would you like
Bess
me
made
to-
his... Nah, I'll keep trying, thanks. Bess made his way over to where I stood. He stood to my right-hand side. I continued to warm up my hands when all of a sudden Bess placed his left hand down the back of my pants. His hand went inside my pants and underwear. The next thing I recall was that he was forced one of his fingers up inside my anus. I don't want to go into the detail of what happened here, but I have made a police statement. I didn't tell anyone about what had happened at the time. Since the day in the staff room, I avoided Best. It was easy to do up until I started grade 6 in 1973. Best became my class teacher. In the early half of 1973, Best called me out at the front of the classroom to read from a book. Best was sitting on the edge of his desk at the front of the room. I stood beside the desk immediately to the left of Best. As I was reading the book, Best again slid his hand down the back of my pants. His hand went inside my pants and underwear. Best started rubbing his fingers around the outside of my anus, but did not insert his finger into my anus. I recall clenching my buttocks as hard as I could and stop reading. Bess looked at me and said, "Don't stop reading, keep going." I continued to read, but it was a bit stop-start at best. Bess still had his hand down my pants and tried to rub his finger around the outside of my anus. This would have gone on for at least 5 minutes before he moved his hand from my pants and sent me back to my seat. Bess then had another boy go up to the class and read. I can't recall who the boy was. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I was again called out to the front of the class to read. Again, the same thing happened where Bess slid his hand down the back of my pants and underwear, rubbed his fingers around the outside of my anus, but did not insert his finger into my anus. Again, this went on for at least 5 minutes. I recall clenching my buttocks again as hard as I could. After the second time, I decided to find some pants that were getting too small for me and were due to be handed down to my younger brother. Even though they were too tight for me, I started to wear them all the time at the school. My mum didn't seem to notice. For the rest of the year, when I got called up to read in front of the class on 2 to 3 more occasions, Bess wasn't able to put his hand down the back of my pants, although he did try to. There were a lot of fights in the playground between the kids at St. Olevia's. I think this was because every one of us who was sexually abused at school was trying to prove that we were not weak. In 1974, I started Form 1 at St Pat's College as a day boy. I was 12 years old by then. St Pat's College was a massive school with impressive looking buildings. I thought it was good that I was away from St Aletheus. That was until I met Brother Edward Dowell. Could you take over for a while, please, Councillor?
Certainly. Dowland was my main teacher in Form 1 and took most of the subjects. In the first half of 1974, I remember I did something wrong and Dowland sent me up to the rear of the classroom. Dowland told the rest of the class to keep on doing their work and not to turn around. Dowland walked up to the rear of the classroom to where I stood and told me to hold out my hand. I did as I was told, and he struck me over the hand at least 10 times with a leather strap. The leather strap was just over 1 foot in length and about 1 inch wide. It was about 3/4 of an inch thick and was made up of stitched together leather. When Dowland finished strapping me, he pushed against me and my back was against either a bench or table located at the rear of the room. Dowland was facing me and commenced thrusting his pelvis into my stomach and chest area like he was dry humping me. Whilst we were fully clothed, I could feel his erect penis under his clothes each time he thrust into me. I was too scared to move, so I just stood there waiting for him to finish. The thrusting lasted for a couple of minutes before I noticed his breathing change and his eyes roll back. Then he moved away from me and told me to go back to my seat. The same thing happened to me about a month and a half later. Throughout the rest of the year, I received at least a dozen strappings, but the dry humping only occurred on 2 occasions. No one in the class turned around while this was happening. I think no one turned around because they were shit scared that they would be brought down the back too. In the winter of that same year, Dowland told me and another boy to leave the classroom. I remember it was winter because I was wearing full-length pants at the time. I only wore those during the colder months. I don't remember why we were told to leave the classroom, but I assume we must have done something wrong. Dowland marched us to a small tin shed located next to the classroom near the sports oval. The shed was a 20-foot by 30-foot galvanised metal shed where the school used to store sports and general equipment. There was a table tennis table in there. Dowland opened the door of the shed and told the other boy and me to go in. This was the first time I'd seen the inside of the shed. Dowland got one of us to stand just inside the door and the other on the other side of the table tennis table, which was folded up. I stood just inside and couldn't see the other boy from where I was standing. As soon as we walked into the shed, Dowland placed his leather strap down on the table, located near where I was standing. Dowland walked over to me and was facing me. He pushed his pelvis into me, forcing me backwards against a table. He started thrusting his pelvis into me. I noticed that on this occasion I couldn't feel his erection. This lasted momentarily before Dowland forced me to turn around. I could feel his hand was on my back, pushing me forwards over the table. Dowland was standing behind me, and the next thing I knew was that his other hand reaching around me, trying to undo the front of my pants. As he was trying to undo my pants, I knew he was trying to rape me by sticking a finger into my anus. I pushed backwards away from the table and tried to turn around to get away from him. The next thing I felt was Dowland punched me twice in the back, causing me to fall forwards onto the table again. Dowland then wrenched me around so that I was facing him again. This time he grabbed his leather strap from the table and began hitting me with it. He would have hit me at least 20 times across my right hand. I remember it was my right hand because for the next few weeks I tried to write with my left hand. After Dowland finished strapping me, I was sent back to the classroom. When I got sent out of the shed, the other boy was still in there. It would have been at least 20 minutes after I had returned to the classroom that the other boy returned in tears. Dowland then returned to the classroom not long after the boy. In 1976, when I was in Form 3 at St Patrick's, I used to skip class frequently. I remember on one occasion I went to the toilet block to have a smoke. I was in one of the cubicles when the school's cleaner entered the block and lit up a cigarette also. As we were smoking, the cleaner edged his way closer to me and eventually reached down towards my groin. I pushed my way past him and walked out of the toilets to make my way back to the classroom. I don't remember the name of the cleaner, but I remember that he was Caucasian, tall, overweight, dark brown coloured hair and had a turned eye. I think he would have been an employee of the school. I couldn't say how long he had been there, but he would have had a permanent job at the school. When I turned 15 in April 1977, I left school for good. I did not tell anyone about my abuse by Fitzgerald, Best or Dowland at the time it was happening. The first person I told was my current wife in about 2000. The physical and sexual abuse I suffered when I was in school has caused me to suffer immense psychological and emotional pain. I fell heavily into substance abuse and even attempted to commit suicide on numerous occasions. These incidents, in combination with the constant reliving of these incidents, practically ruined my life. I have trouble sleeping at night because of bad dreams. Sometimes if I don't take medication, my family hears me screaming at night. I've had hundreds of jobs and ongoing problems with dealing with authority. If there's pressure put on me, I fold or just shut down. I feel like if someone's trying to dominate me or boss me around, I react badly to that. My last job started off perfect because I was working in chook sheds. I picked up dead chooks and culled sick ones. But then my employer started getting me to do maintenance work and the pressure built up. My reactions to certain things were often explosive in nature. One of the other employees frustrated me to the point where I had to leave. My youngest brother reckoned I was so much smarter than him. He earns a lot of money, whereas I'm going to the Selbos to feed my kids. I did an adult job apprenticeship in about 1989, but I couldn't do any of the theory work because I couldn't sit in a classroom. The classroom setting reminds me of the schools I was in and the times I was abused. I tried a hydraulics and pneumatics course, but as soon as I sit in a classroom, I can't handle it. If I can't study, how do I better myself? I have difficult close friends with males. I have two fairly close friends. Because of our pasts, we understand each other. I see them once a month, but I have no ongoing contact with anyone from school since I left at 15. I would have just tried to bury everything that happened there. I'm on a disability support pension, which I'm really embarrassed about. This adds to the anxiety and depression. It upsets me that the institution responsible isn't doing anything about it. As I got older, my relationship with my parents deteriorated. I don't have any relationship with my parents or my brothers. I've been married twice. My first marriage lasted 7 years, which was longer than it should have because I was away in the army. My first marriage broke down because of a lot of different reasons. My drinking got heavier and I've got trust issues. My current wife has had to put up with a lot over the years. I've tried suicide a few times. My wife has to live through all this. But because my wife is now aware of my past, she is supportive of me. It's been a real toll on my daughters and my wife, and I can't imagine how they live with it. I try my best, but sometimes my brain just doesn't let me function. I just shut down. There have been times where I have to get away and I go bush. I could be gone from anything up to 6 weeks. It must be hard for them not knowing what I'm doing or whether they're going to see me alive again. Around a decade or so ago, I contacted the Diocese of Ballarat. I wanted help because I thought I can only drink and smoke so much. I said to someone at the diocese, I need some help. Is there anything I can get? The next thing I was told that I had to meet some fellow out at an office block on the corner of Dana and Lydiard Streets in Ballarat. When I went to the office block, the fellow wanted to take a statement from me. That seemed to me like all he was interested in. He wasn't interested in my welfare or anything. After the interview, he was concerned as to whether I was right to drive home. Towards Healing gave me 5 counselling sessions. They told me which counsellor to see. He came across as a wonderful fellow, but I couldn't open up to him because the church told me to go there and they were paying his wage. After I had finished these 5 sessions, I had to beg for another 5. After 10 sessions, Towards Healing refused to pay for more counselling sessions for me. They said, you've had 10 sessions of counselling, you should be fine now. The psychologist or counsellor I was seeing at the time then got me another 5 counselling sessions through victims of crime. Sometime after this, I went to a mediation in Melbourne. Wayne Chanley from Broken Rights came with me. I only met the mediator. I don't know who else was there. They offered me $57,000, which made me realise that the church was not interested in making good my life. I refused the offer. A few months later, there was another mediation session held. This time the mediator offered me $65,000, a take it or leave it offer. I tried for counselling to be put on top of the $65,000, but they told me to use the $65,000 to pay for counselling. I ended up accepting that offer and I signed a deed of release. I was such a mess at the time. If they had a conscience, they would not have settled anything that day until I was in a better mental state. But I felt like they just wanted it over and done with. I was suicidal at this time. The Christian Brothers never encouraged me to go to the police. They did nothing to make getting legal advice possible, like say they would help pay for it. They said they were surprised that I was bringing these matters forward. They made me feel like I was the only one who had come forward with complaints like this. During the mediation, some brother I had never met before said, "We're really sorry," and stuck his hand out. I hate myself today still for shaking his hand. I felt like the apology was just words and there was no compassion. My experience with Towards Healing was horrific, and I was left feeling really suicidal by the end of it. Mr. Chantley really helped me through Towards Healing. He was magnificent. In about 2013, I was referred to Liv Waller of Waller Legal by Andrea Lockhart from Carswell. Andrea had told me that Liv Waller was trying to get the Christian Brothers to revisit the previous Towards Healing settlements that were unfair. I contacted Ms Waller in early 2012 and she agreed to help me. She told me it would be hard as I had already signed a release promising not to take action against the Christian Brothers again. I told her that there were things I was not strong enough to put in the Towards Healing statement. She got some reports about how I was going and a report from Andrea. I was so stressed out that I could not bear to meet, so she arranged everything by phone and told me I didn't have to come to any meetings with her or with the Christian Brothers if I didn't want to. This was a great relief to me. Even today, going to Melbourne is traumatic for me because it reminds me of the Towards Healing process. Ms Waller organised a settlement conference which occurred in November 2013. She said I did not have to go, and it was arranged that Ms Waller would ring me. She had the Christian Brothers to disclose to her in 2013 how many other complaints they'd received about Fitzgerald, Dowland and Best, which were alleged to have occurred prior to the time of the abuse on me. She told me then, and has recently reminded me, that the answer was 14 complaints in relation to Fitzgerald, 21 complaints in relation to Dowland, and 40 complaints in relation to Best. The Christian Brothers never told me this at the time of my Towards Healing mediation. Ms Waller argued that the Towards Healing process was really unfair because the Christian Brothers did not tell me this. The Towards Healing process did not get a report from my treating psychologist, despite being asked to by Wayne Chamberlain. After the Towards Healing mediation, I found out by the time of that mediation, Best had already been convicted twice of sex offences and Dowland convicted once. None of this was disclosed to me or Ms Waller in the mediation. As a result of the reopened mediation, I received further compensation of $90,000. The Christian Brothers made no separate arrangements to pay my legal fees, so $13,000 was deducted in fees. I cleared $77,000. In about 2011, I saw an article in the Ballarat Courier which mentioned the Ballarat Centre Against Sexual Assault. I got in touch with them and I began counselling with Andrea Lockhart from CASA once a week. I also joined the men's group at CASA. Joining the men's group has really benefited me. We don't know what happened to us. We talk about what we do in our life. Everyone's behaviour is so similar. I have seen a transition with everyone who has come to CASA. I've always felt so isolated and unique in the way my brain worked and the way I lived my life. It was great not to feel lonely now because there are others with the same problem. It is sad, but that isolation and loneliness I felt has been broken down by the group. I had about 12 to 18 months of counselling sessions with Andrea before I finally felt I was in a position to report to the police. In July 2012, I reported to Victoria Police about my abuse. At the time of reporting and making a statement with the police, I became aware that Fitzgerald was dead. I signed a police statement dated 31 July 2012. I don't remember if the police had a go at trying to identify the nun who sexually abused me. I don't think there was anything they could follow up on that at all. If they put Sister David and Sister Paula in the lineup, I wouldn't be able to pick them out. I found the response by Victoria Police to be really good. They were really patient and understanding. I had to go back to the police station a couple of times and work with them on my statement. That frustrated me a bit because of the time, but I understand that they were busy. It was a drawn-out process. The case was later transferred to the Sarno Task Force. After the case was transferred to the Sarno Task Force, there was a 12 to 18 months where I didn't hear anything on the case. That was causing me a lot of distress. It was a long time to be in limbo. Colleen Connolly from Sarno Task Force was a lot better with keeping me informed of how the different cases were going. The police told me that Father Dowland had changed his surname to Ted Bales. In early February 2015, Dowland appeared before a judge in Melbourne County Court for a pre-sentence. He pleaded guilty to offences against a total of more than 20 boys, including me. He received sentences totalling 6 years with a 3-year minimum. I have been notified that the DPP has appealed the sentence. During the Victorian parliamentary inquiry in 2013, I wasn't strong enough to do a private submission on my own, but I was part of the group submission by Ballarat Survivors Group. My experience of the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry wasn't easy. It was sort of frustrating in the sense that nothing really was done except for a few laws to be put in place that will hopefully save some kids. But I felt like there was no answer for me or for a lot of other fellow victims. I would like to have a formal apology, an acknowledgement from the Catholic Church linked with the actual taking of responsibility for looking after the problems they have caused. I would also like the Catholic Church to lose their tax-free status because they have shown themselves to be just a business organisation. I would love to see a national redress scheme with a standardised approach from everyone, no matter where you come from. With the focus on victims, now we can get the help we need and try to take some of the triggers off for people with suicidal thoughts. On the issue of confessional reporting, the Catholic Church should require clergy to report crimes that are confessed to them. It's ludicrous that people could go into a confessional box and confess horrendous crimes and be absolved. It's just saying you can do what you want without any proper legal punishment. It's just like saying a few Hail Marys is the worst punishment you're going to get. How the clergy still get away with that, I don't know.
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions of Mr. BAA? There's no questions for you, sir. Thank you for your statement and your evidence. You're now excused.